Guys, welcome back to the channel. Doing a little bit of tackle maintenance before we head out on Fort tomorrow. But it's time for tips number 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and a little bonus tip. But as you can see now, look at that glide bait collection. Is that awesome or what? This is the Swerve. This is at B.A.S.S Bass Pro Shop. It's like $17.99. They're pretty amazing. Come with an extra tail. They're good baits. I'll be throwing one of them in the morning. But let's go through. And I wrote them down because I want to make sure I got them right. Let's start on the tip. Number five. Let's get straight into it. Number 5 tip: install depth. A lot of people don't know what install depth is. Install depth is you should measure from the water line. This is what it's designed for: is to measure from the water line down to the top of your transducer. That's the install depth. And what that does is help you get an accurate depth representation. And what that does essentially is it slides the screen down on the fish finder to mirror where the transducer is in the water. But what I have found by putting the install depth on, say, like 2.5 feet, that's kind of my go-to, it allows me, by sliding the screen down slightly, it allows me to see the splash of the bait better. And in crappie fishing especially, seeing that splash is very important, especially if you have bait fish. I'm glad that thing turned off. If you have bait fish or a lot of crappie, you want to be able to see that splash to help you find your bait a lot quicker. It makes you more efficient. It eliminates the need for multiple casts trying to find it. If you can see the splash, you're going to be a better fisherman because you'll be able to track that bait better coming down. That's important. Number 4, something that we touch on a lot. You have 6 beams. There's 6 beams there. I know before I've said 5. So if you want to call me out on that, you can. You have 6 beams. And what it is that transducer is getting that information from 6 different beams. It sends it to the black box sends it up to the unit. Now the unit's got to take all those 6 beams and portray them onto your screen. And they don't always portray on there in a perfectly lined up manner. Now they put a focus, you can go into your installation, there's a focus setting. Adjust your focus setting where you can get those beams to line up perfectly. That way when a fish is coming across beam to beam, he's nice and smooth. Or if you see a tree and it's crossing multiple beams, you won't have a tree that goes and then has a crook in it because those beams are lined up. You remember, it's trying to take 6 different signals and put them together in one picture. So take the focus, and I usually use the bottom and line that bottom up as close as perfect. That way when a fish swims across, he'll swim perfectly across the screen. He's those beams, and then they're pretty close most times, but always, and let me tell you this, no number is the same for each fish finder. Each fish finder is always going to be a little bit different. So find the focus and kind of dial it in. You do it once, you don't have to do it again. Every one of my clients I do on the water, I always send them an info sheet, because when we find their focus number, that way they can have it and dial it back in later if they have to redo something or they have to restore sonar defaults and things like that. So that's very, very important. That is tip number 4. Tip number 3, where do you set your bottom depth? Always I don't set my bottom depth 2 feet below or 3 feet below. No, I set my bottom about 5 to 8. There's a couple different reasons for that. 5 to 8 foot below the bottom. Number 1, I don't use auto, because auto tends to jump up, down, left, right. I don't use that. I want to manually set it. Usually when you're fishing in a very relatively consistent depth. Number one, I never go above 15 feet. 15 is the minimum I will set mine. I'm not, if I'm in 6 foot of water, I'm not going to set it in 10. 15 foot. 5 to 8 feet. Take your depth, add 5 to 8 feet. Try to find that closest number. If you're saying 13, it's going to be about 20. If you're in, 18, it's going to be 25. 5 to 8 feet. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's going to do a couple things. It's going to give you a more consistent picture, less jumping, less adjusting as you do kind of go up and down in depth. It's going to give you less adjustment because you got a little range to go by. And then lastly, which I think is very important, the Livescope transducer is a chirp style transducer. And the computer picks the best frequency based on the depth and a lot of different scenarios. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to fool it into thinking we're in a deeper depth. As you know, half the mega imaging doesn't work way off. It has to go to lower frequencies. So what I'm trying to do, and it's just a couple numbers, but I've learned that by kind of fooling it into thinking you're in deeper water, it helps clear up the screen. That may be a byproduct of the fact that you're shrinking the screen down so artifacts don't show up as much, and it kind of be a little bit of that plus a lower frequency is going to pick up a little bit less detail, things like that. So that's why 5 to 8 foot. That's my tip number 3. Number 2, clean power. Don't mix it and put it on your cranking battery with a live well and your pumps and your other transducers and your all that stuff will create these Livescopes are very sensitive to outside interference. They're sensitive to trolling motor interference. They're sensitive to live wells going off, the bilge pumps. Everything that goes is interference. So you want to have as clean a power as possible. And that leads me to the second part of this. I like to use a fuse block. I run at least 10 gauge marine grade wire to the fuse blocks. And then I will use the standard power wire, if I can, to go to this fuse blocks. First of all, that's going to allow me to very quickly see if I have a blown fuse. I have some videos on this where if a fuse blows, it lights up. Very quickly see if I have a problem with either a blown fuse, a loose fuse, or some kind of problem with each of my units because I have them labeled and they're right there. I can look at the top of it and say, 1242, blown fuse. Bam, bam, quickly replace the fuse, go right back to it. Black box, blown fuse, go right back to it. Never had a blown fuse, but it allows me to quickly be able to identify a problem on the water and get back to fishing faster. And I think that's very important. Number one thing that you'll ever do, learn boat control. I've covered it in other deals and I've talked about it with the live foot and things like that, but boat control is number one. Always facing into the wind, using the lowest speed possible, but aggressive boat control. It sounds crazy. Aggressive boat control. I'm going to be chasing the fish as fast as I can without spooking them. So you're trying to find that fine line. But a lot of times when I'm chasing those fish, when I see them, then I'll dial back that speed. So I'm covering water very quickly, see a fish, dial back that speed where I'm just barely creeping in, or even at times maintaining and using the remote, as we talked about before, to spot lock, and then use my live foot. If you don't have live foot, it gets a little trickier with the trolling motor, but there are a lot of people that use just the trolling motor, so don't feel like you got to go out and get a live foot. They ain't cheap. You can use a live scanner. You can use a right height. You can use homemade poles. Don't think you have to use those. That's just what I like to use. A lot of people use homemade poles very effectively. Very effective. Piece of PVC pipe. See them all the time. People kick their butts doing it. So don't always feel like you got to use exactly what I'm telling you to use. So that's important. But boat control is the most important. Whether you use a pole, whether you use your trolling motor, doesn't matter. Boat control is very important. And a little bonus, I'm going to tell you, this is something that I found. Whether you listen to me or any other person about Livescope, nothing will replace time on the water. Because although something may fit me or something that I may think is a perfect settings or the perfect starting point, nothing is going to fit my eye like it fits your eye. You may think something is beautiful. I may love the blue and the nighttime color palette. You may not like it. You may like the amber. I may like the Caribbean or the rusted steel or some of those colors for you may not like them. So just because I think it's the best doesn't automatically guarantee that you're going to do the best. Use my stuff or use whoever you want to watch. Use that as guidelines to be able to learn it, get some time on the water, and then you can follow and develop your own settings. If you feel that mine or somebody else's are not perfect, develop your own settings and your own techniques and your own ways of fishing using Livescope. So using our stuff as guidelines only, it's not set in stone. What I may consider a beautiful picture, you may not. You may like that ultra clear picture. Me, I don't mind a little fuzz because I want to make sure I miss nothing. So use it as guidelines, but it's not a set in stone standard Bible for lack of a better word. You use it to find your special settings and your favorite techniques. Me, I love to chase individual big bass, big spit, don't catch as many as I used to back then. I used to catch a bunch, but I catch a lot of small ones. I like to go for the bigger ones, the individual fish, like to chase them. I like to do those kind of things. You may not. You may like it just for looking at brush piles or fishing for schools or, just seeing what's on the bank, using it for grass. That's okay. Use my guidelines to find your style, your settings, and you put them all together to create what's best and what's most efficient for you. But guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I just want to say thank you to everybody. We're into December now, and I want to tell y'all Merry Christmas. I think it's going to be a great Christmas this year, but it's been a great year because of you guys right here. I'm hoping the live foot giveaway. Of course, we're going to have some more giveaways. Probably not no more this month. We're going to have some more giveaways. But guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And ring the bell.